Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have a pleasure of working on another one of Sammy's reels. This one is the Penn Fathom II. It's the 30 level wind size. And we're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, how to get it back to Sammy so that he can take it fishing again. Now Sammy is, as many of you know from the previews, has sent me quite a few reels. He enjoys using the line counter reels, and he's got a boat that he takes out in the San Francisco Bay area, and well, it's time for an annual tune-up, and that's what we've been doing. So one of the things I always recommend when you go to service a reel is to get the schematics of the reel, and that'll tell you in an exploded version how these pieces and parts come together to form the reel. Well, if you're servicing it and you're going to take it apart, you need to know where those pieces and parts go from an orientation standpoint, so that if you get stuck along the way, you can get yourself unstuck. Or if you're figuring out that there doesn't seem to be a way for this to detach or this one to come together or whatever, that schematic will help you tremendously. So we're going to show you how to do this, and we're going to give you a little bit of an idea about that Fathom reel in and of itself. So you can see that there is salt stuff that is going on here, and it is time for servicing. Sammy's one of the folks that does keep the box, so don't be fooled to thinking that this is a new reel just because it came out of a nice box in good condition. Well, we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces and parts. As we do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel, and if you do subscribe to my channel, please hit the notification button. That way you'll be able to see which videos I'm posting when, and you'll be able to make a determination as to whether that's a video that you want to see. I work on all kinds of fishing reels. Today we're working on a line counter, which is kind of an ocean type of a reel. And tomorrow, well, we might be working on a freshwater bait caster or an ultralight spinning reel or a saltwater surf reel. It varies by what comes into my shop, and you get the chance to see all kinds of reels. And if that's what you like from a hobby standpoint or otherwise, then always a good idea to do that subscription and notification. All right, there's an indentation here, and there's a washer on top of the stack here, which is going to fit inside there. And then I'm going to put that handle and the washer and this little tension washer which goes under that. I'm going to pull it all of those, as well as other pieces and parts that I take. I take them and put them into a parts tray. I use a fast food container for my parts tray, and we'll go next to the star adjuster. Star adjuster reels have been around a long time. They've been around since the 1920s, and it's a unique drag system, generally credited to Vom Hoff, but it certainly has had a lot of variations, but really hasn't changed too much over time. All right, so there's a kind of a smaller washer, and then there's these two beveled washers, two beveled washers. I guess I just knocked one of them out. And I put those into the container so that I know that's where those washers come from and go to. But we have an open side now. We have 4 side plate screws at a minimum. I don't think we have to remove this this line counter. I guess we're going to find out. But it's been a little while since I worked on one of these, but I guess I can take a look on the schematic here and see. Well, I do show the burst on this. Let's see if it's just as a replacement piece or if it's something else. Well, first issue here is that I have pretty much a flat-bladed screw. These screws have little plastic washers behind them. So if you're finding these little guys, they tend to run around a bit. But if you are finding the little washer around, that's where it came from. It's easy enough to put those down on your desk and have that washer pop off, or sometimes it sticks to the ridge inside here. And what I'm doing as I'm taking these screws off is I'm putting them into a corner of my parts tray, and I'm making sure that all of these are the same length. If there's a longer one or a shorter one, then you want to identify that. You want to make sure that as you go back to reassemble the reel, that the piece is there. All right, there's also 2 small screws here but I don't believe those come out when we remove the side plate. I guess we're going to find out real soon if there's any resistance at all. We're going to find out if we need to remove the line counter or the backing there. So let's see what's going on. No, they don't have to come out. Well, you can see, even though the box is new, there's a whole lot of stuff going on here that says needs to be cleaned up and lubricated. That's not atypical at all. That's why you service your reels on a regular basis. There's also a kind of a pointed clutch here, and we'll show you a little bit about that as we get to that side. Well, to service that, you are going to need to take off those two screws. On this side then, you see that we have a drive here on the line counter, and that was not necessary to remove that line counter. And these are your drive reels. That line counter is going to come in here and intersect with the front end of this little plastic gear, and that's what's going to drive, or it's going to help count the balance of that. There's a couple of things going on here. Let me might as well put it up the right way, orientation wise. We have our pinion gear, we have our yoke, we have the trip mechanism, and we have the jack. So let's service this side of the reel first because it's in its entirety and it's relatively easy to do. You can't remove this without removing the yoke. To remove the yoke, we have two springs that have center screws in them. This is a good place to tell you to take pictures. It is so easy to get this wrong. You have a spring, you have the tie down screw. You have that on both sides. They're small pieces. Another reason why you would take the time to put these into a parts tray or organize them in another way that helps you to keep track of the pieces and parts as you're disassembling the reel. This whole piece will come out now. And again, you want to notice the orientation of these pieces. And I think, I'm not sure, let's see if we can get this one out without the other piece being out. Well, all right. We're going to want to remove this spring. Take a picture of that right there, because when you go to remount this, you're going to need to know how that spring goes. Now we should be able to take two more screws out here. There's one on each side of the yoke that's kind of guiding it. That gets used a lot. A lot of times on a spinning reel, you'll see the screw actually acting as a channel or a cap lever, and that's done like on burring tie downs, for example, would be that. All right, very interesting. Most of the time you'll see a reel that'll have one side or the other side of the side plate has all business. In this case, we have both the one side, the flat side, and then we have the business side over here, and they're both kind of the same there. All right, I want to clean the back plate first. And while I'm doing that, if you have any questions on this reel or servicing a reel, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck on something, maybe you just want to learn more about the reel itself, maybe you want to find out about Von Hoff. As I mentioned, the storage drag system has been around a long time. If you want to learn a little bit more, if you have a question, if you want to get unstuck or see if I can help you get unstuck in a reel service, then go ahead and leave that question in the comment section. I'll be happy to try and solve that for you. All right, well, we want to work kind of with the pieces and parts we can, and we want to get them back on the reel as soon as possible so that, well, it doesn't get confused. So I'm going to take a brush now, and I'm going to clean out the channels in the pinion gear. I'm going to use a little bit of a penetrating oil to clean that. And this is a very substantial gear. I know a lot of folks will watch these videos because they're considering purchasing a reel. And well, you see why some of the reels cost what they do when you get into the mechanics behind it and the materials used. Okay, there were two springs on the yoke, and that's actually where the other springs mount. That's to prevent the spring coil, this coil here, from getting caught up in that. So when you go to reinstall, remember those two little washers there. But we don't need to do much with this. We want to clean the jack and put that on. Be careful with that little spring. It may shoot. I've left the one side attached. We've cleaned up the face, so let's go ahead and put a little bit of grease back in here. We're going to want to bring the jack down, and we're going to have to line that that spring up. So I think the easiest thing to do in terms of that is don't set your jack all the way in place. Just come over, kind of line the tag end of this spring. Probably not going to be easy. Keep it out of the way. Get it into the hole like I just did. You can see how we mounted the spring there. And then bring the assembly over and bring it into place. Now that's going to want to bump out. Remember, we had the two screws that are holding that as a channel. So let's go ahead and put those two screws right back in to hold it down so that we can free our hands up to do other things. Let's see if I can get that screw to hold with my driver. It'd be easier. One on each side. Again, be careful where you lay your pieces and parts. It's easy for me to knock those two pieces off there, so just be aware that they're there and that there's a chance that you may knock them around if you don't put them into a parts tray. Again, what I'm working for here is to try and get this stuff back on the reel after the pieces have been cleaned. A little bit of grease onto the shoulders of the yoke. Just checking the shoulders to see if there's a particular orientation. There isn't. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease for this, and we want to re-grease the pinion gear. I use an artist brush to spread the grease. You can use a lot of different things. My preference is the artist brush. Alright, the part with the cross goes on the back side of this. It goes down. Got that upside down. And then make sure you press in to lock that into the spool side. Get your two little washers. Make sure those go over the posts. Again, that's just to keep this spring on each side from trapping and preventing a nice easy release of that free spool. Alright, spring one. Doesn't matter which spring you put on next. Okay, to do that, pull your spring down so that you have full range, and then tighten down your screw. Make sure that it seats properly. Tighten it down, and that's you're set on that side. Let's do it again for you. I'm going to take the spring. Remember, we have that little collar washer on there. You want to pull the spring down so that it clears the shoulders. Get your screw started there. And then tighten your screw down. Make sure that it goes in nice and easy. That's that. Alright, so this is the way we found it. Remember what we did? We added the two screws there, the spring washer behind it. And now this should pull in and out pretty easily. You'll see how that operates when you're going to use a lever, how it's pulling it in and out to do that. And then you've got your trip lever below here, which will be driven off this back click here. That's what this is about. All right, let's go over to this, this nice and dirty gear side and clean that up. You have two small screws here. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to remove this. And I'm curious on this one whether they have an instant anti-reverse. I know they have a multi-purpose one. No, I'm not seeing. Yeah, I am. Okay, cool. Just always good to know what's behind you there. All right. Remove that little shroud. Put that into the parts tray. Remember those two little screws? They tend to run away from you. And then this whole assembly will come out. Yeah, this is what I was thinking. That they have 3 fail-safe anti-reverse dogs. All right, we want to do the same thing with this. We want to take a nice healthy spray of penetrating oil and clean up all the old dirt and grease that is accumulated in here. I like to use the least abrasive cleaning as possible, so I'm just going to use a paper towel to mop up. And if we find that, well, it's not good enough, or I can't reach it with a paper towel, the next thing I would do is a cotton swab. We can see there's been a little bit of grease and not accumulated on the case here. And then I would go for the kitchen scrubby next. What I'm doing right now is I'm pulling all of this out because I want to clean the rest of this up. I'm going to take the main shaft. Then we've got this ratchet here for the main shaft. Oh, this is the one I was looking for. This is your trip lever, remember. That's going to come back this way. It's going to seat like that. And I think we can actually seat this if we wanted to with the gear in that bag. But this is a little bit of a balancing act. I've worked on these before, so I'll show you how I do it. There's one more in here. And a note on the Fathom and the Squall and some of the others, you no longer have those eared washers, the metal eared washers. What you have now is you have a series of drag washers that have the ears on the fabric washer itself. You can see the spikes here. And those are going to hold your gear. So when you do a drag system, it's going 2 ways. One is going to hold the axle shaft, and the other is going to hold the gear. And the more pressure you put down, the more they hold both. And eventually what happens is that the pieces come together, tighten down, and prevent any movement there. Well, these are HT100 drag washers, so we can use grease on them, and that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to grab the washer. I'm going to put that in a tub of Cal's Universal drag grease. As long as you can see the cross hatches on the drag washers, they're still in good condition. Wipe off any excess. If you don't wipe off the excess, the only thing that's going to happen is it's going to get squeezed out. Next up then is this big flat washer with the stack underneath it. I'm going to do this 2 more times. Again, just get a nice coating of it. If there's excess on it, just wipe it off. Lay that in next. Then we have this squared washer, kind of the traditional keyed washer here. That goes in next. Then the third of the drag washers, do the same thing again. That comes in, seats nicely. And then this is your pressure plate washer. And this one's particularly interesting because it's got the double on it, because the other piece is going to lock in with the piece that's here. I'm going to go like this. Just like that. That's how it's going to lock in. Of course, what we want to do before we lock that in is we want to grease the main gear. Check all of the teeth. This one's clean. If there's any dirt and debris, do what I just did on that pinion gear for an example. Kind of use some penetrating oil or something. Get a hard bristle brush, pull out the old dirt and grease, and then come on back in with it. Okay, let's go ahead and put that back in then. Make sure it locks with the collar. And we have our shaft assembly with the washer on it. We have a bearing back here, so let's make sure that we oil the bearing. And very important here, there's a rectangle that this is sitting in. You need to make sure that those mesh properly. And bring this shaft through now. That is your shaft assembly for the reel. And so we can take the collar again, put the collar back on, and we can tighten that down. Now what I like to do with it at this point is I like to go ahead and finish the front of this gear so that I can hold this gear assembly in place. That's kind of the way it came out. I know we got ahead of ourselves on the one, but I'm going to want to hold this in, because if you don't, this is going to slide out and you're going to mismatch the other piece. Well, there's a bearing here. We want to oil the bearing underneath that. That actually has a little plastic sleeve on it, kind of a bearing shield. So oiling the shield isn't going to do much, but oil the bearing underneath it. Underneath that is the anti-reverse. That does not get oil, so you can simply do what we just did here. We have the two tension washers. I put them face to face so that there's a belly in the middle of it. And we have that flatter one. And we have the click ratchet, and the click ratchet rides up. So don't put it down, put it up so that the area is exposed. We're going to run this on. That's going to keep our gear set in place now. Just like that. Then you can give it a test. It's going to run fine. Alright, the rest of it is just a matter of meshing your bearing here with the cavity here. And you're going to note that you have a peg, so that when you go to install, that peg is going to need to kind of line up properly. Those pegs are your screw holes. And I'm just trying to get the visual so that I'm in. There we go. So now we've got a nice tight seam throughout. That's important. And you can just hold it, because if it's not running right now, that's running nicely. But if it wasn't running right now, then you would just simply back it off and make sure that you corrected that. All right, let's take the 4 screws that belong in the side plate now. We'll do that next. I'm going to leave the general body cleaning on this one until the last step. I did want to get this case back on. And I've worked on a couple of these. I've tried different ways, and what I've just done there seems to be the most efficient way of getting the case back on, is by using the tie down here, the star adjuster, to hold that assembly in place. Every now and then, if you don't, what happens is that little rectangle on that back end of the main gear, well, that gets kind of out of position, and then, well, it's hard to turn, and then you know you did something wrong. Okay, with that all buttoned up here, let's just give it a spin. It spins nicely. Let's come over here then and service the line guide. I have a little support post here. I think you can probably get that support post out. To service that line guide, you're going to want to come over to the other side of the case, which is what we're going to do anyway, because you need to service the spool as well. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to take the 4 side plate screws out, make sure they're all the same. Put them into another corner of my parts tray. And again, when you work on one side or one sub-assembly, it's always a little bit easier than just taking the reel apart in its entirety. Some of you may have watched the video I just did on a reel in a bag project. Well, that's kind of how reel in a bag projects happen. With the side plate removed, go ahead and pull the spool out, and then you should be able to remove this post here. This one seems to be, oh, this is the post. Remove the post, and that'll give you access to the pawl which just fell out. Alright, if you see any evidence of dirt in that, clean it. You can use a penetrating oil if you like. You can rub it down with some paper towels and so on. This one seems pretty darn clear. Check your pawl, make sure that it's clean, not contaminated with any dirt and debris. Check the shoulder, and check the points on it to make sure that they are nice and crisp. If one side is shorter than the other, it's going to need to be replaced because it will wind up getting hung up there. With that in place, then go ahead and put the pawl back in. Make sure that it seats all the way down low. Put the pawl cap, well, you can put a drop of oil in there. And get your pawl cap back on. This little bar is kind of annoying. I guess it's to keep the pawl assembly from falling out, maybe give it a little extra strength, but you can't get the pawl assembly out without taking that bar off. Tighten that up. Before you reassemble that, spin the reel. Oh, silly me, there's a drive on this side. Spin it on this side. Make sure that your line guide moves back and forth. And then go ahead and reinstall that bar. There's a little inset that goes to that, and you're done there. Here's your spool. The spool has got a bearing on it, so you want to oil that bearing. Grease your spool shaft lightly. Don't go too much with it. Looks like there's a little bit of dirt on the back side of this one, so let's go ahead and get that cleaned off as well while we're at it. Make sure that your line doesn't bunch as you go to reassemble, because that will get caught in the case itself. And go ahead and put that in. Make sure that that cross line meshes properly. Alright, a little cleanup here. There's nothing really to do on this back side here. You do not need to remove all of these pieces. There is a bearing behind here, so make sure that that gets oiled. Just check the teeth on the idler gears. Make sure that they're working properly and that they're all there. This is the #1 fail point on level line reels. And then we can just kind of reassemble. Find your bottom of your reel. That's the way that you're going to run this in terms of having it line up properly. There we go, nice solid snap to that. Let's go back and get the 4 screws and we'll give it a final test there. So the Fathom and the Squall are the two dominant Penn level line saltwater reels these days. They've replaced your 310, 320, 330 series. This is a big one. And this is it's nice. You saw inside the gearing is very nice, very strong. It's a high-speed reel, and this one's built to last. Okay, 2 more of these. We'll put the handle back on. We'll see how we did. We already know it's turning because we tested our line guide, and that always a good thing to do. As I mentioned, you don't want to get too far into reassembly if you're not confident that you didn't merge in the free spool assembly properly, or if you didn't merge in the other pieces and components. All right, tighten that down. I want to put a drop of oil into the carrier up top here as well. On that, I'll come over here and we'll assemble the back end of the handle assembly. So we have that tension washer goes on next. That's to stop the store adjuster from backing up and onto the handle and kind of wedging it in there. And we have the handle washer was under there, and then the handle, now the handle screw, but there's a little plastic washer that's there as well. And just give it a clean up and go. Tighten this down by hand as much as you can. That way you don't risk cross stripping it. And then I use the Penn wrench. If you don't have the Penn wrench alternative, this is an Allen Tanny wrench. If you don't have this wrench, don't worry. Just use the one that came in the box. So this is assuming you're servicing your own reel. Line up the scallop with the hole so that you can use the set screw. Find that set screw and line that up. We'll do light cleaning and then we'll give it a run here. So for the cleaning, I use a Penn rod and reel cleaner. It's a nice product. Of course, this is a Penn reel, so you can say how you're using it because it's that. No, I use it on all the rods and reels. It's good at removing scales. It's a cleaner and a little polish here. All right, just clean it up there. Nice. We're not seeing any salt damage or anything like that other than the actual screw on the side there. All right, let's see how we did then. Nice, tight, even running reel. Free spool beautifully. You can see with the ball bearings how nice and easily that turns. And a heavy retrieve on a big reel. So that's it. That is your Penn Fathom 30 level line reel. That's how you take it apart, how you service it, and how you keep it fishing for a long time to come. I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. To all, please enjoy the holidays. They're upon us. And make sure that you set some time aside for your family and for fishing. And have a great time. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Take care.